tell James you're recording. Okay, that camera's up, James.
So, am I in the 21st century?
Yeah, you're still in the 21st, but you're on the TikTok, so you with the.
I'm gonna let you explain it.
Yeah, let me. Matter of fact, let me. Can I switch? Yeah, let me just do this. Wish we could hear. Jesus, that's what they say.
All right, we're underway.
All righty. We're listening to Mr. L. Nathan here on Living for the People. We're coming live on the broadcast now, radio broadcast on 91.3 FM. Mr. L. Nathan here. Because they can't. I wish I had a speaker in here. We could.
His name is Jalen. And he's not a monster.
Is heartbreaking. We are done dying like this. In this manner, with this fate, nobody should ever suffer the fate that Jalen Walker did.
We know the car is intact and has no bullet holes in it, and so we're interested to find out how this gunshot could have possibly been directed at an officer.
Of course, that as often, people say things that factually don't make as much sense as they try to make it sound like it does. If you fire a gun at a police car, you could miss the car, miss the police officer. You could even miss the ground. You could just miss. So that could be why there was no bullet hole, in the car that the police officer, the initial police officer, was in. But there's a lot more to this story than what's framed in that observation. We're talking about a situation in which this young man was shot at more than 90 times. More than 60 of the bullets hit this man. This man found himself on the ground, and they were firing more than a dozen shots into him while he was on the ground. Not only that, they had the gall to run up on this guy and pull out their handcuffs and handcuff the guy, his hands behind his back.
Unbelievable.
On the basis that he was some sort of a threat to them. Now, he's probably been dead about 58 bullets ago, right? But what are you doing that for? They're doing that because they're faking to try to make it appear as if there was some rationale for what they were doing. When you hear the police holler, taser, I'm going to tase you, I'm going to tase you, but you don't see any police officers tasing him.
Right.
You can't tase him when he's in the car, right? He'd have to be out of the car for you to tase him. No, they said that they were they attempted to tase him. The video does not show them tasing him. The video shows him, in the car, shows him the car coming to a stop, him jumping out of the passenger side of the car, and him running. He has nothing in his hands when he's running. He's not being tased when he's running, and the shots start ringing out about 2 or 3 seconds after he leaves the car that he was leaving from or departing from. So if he was tasing, they were tasing the air. They weren't tasing him. And they weren't close enough in their tasing that you could see it on the video feed of what actually took place. So my point is that police frequently create a scenario to explain or to justify what they do. So, sometimes they'll say, taser, I'll tase you, I'm going to tase you, I'm going to tase you, when they've already made a decision that they're going to shoot you and they actually have shot you. But they can then say, well, you can hear it on my body cam. You can hear me saying taser, and so on. They're creating a lattice. Now, I could be wrong. I mean, we're speculating on all of this. I didn't see any of that. I'm just saying that there are anomalies. We'll get into this in just a minute.
Okay.
So we can understand what's going on here. This is L. Nathan here. Welcome you to our broadcast, focused on providing you insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events. Those facts are important. The facts behind those events and the policies that are shaping our world for the day and for tomorrow. So join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, our program is live, so you can call in, you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will, because if you all talk about this, you may have a completely different sense of what we're looking at and hearing than I'm getting from it, and that will round out, our view. I'm always open, for people providing us with alternate, perspectives about something, because I can only sit where I'm sitting. I can only see things from the point of view that I have from where I'm sitting.
Right.
So if you're sitting in another place, you may see the same fact differently. Then that allows us to be able to know a little bit more about what's going on, so we can have a more, balanced or nuanced understanding about what it is that we're reacting to. So please call in. We look forward to you calling in. You all know that, we have been admitted into the 21st century. Although we had some equipment problems.
Actually, Wi-Fi today.
Wi-Fi. Is that 21st century?
It may be 21st century.
This is Willie H., who does the live streaming of our program, and now he's doing a TikTok or something.
Yeah, we're doing TikTok today because we couldn't get on the Facebook with the Wi-Fi, so we're going to use my phone for TikTok.
We're all here, and we're here with James Brown, who is the producer of our program. Welcome, James.
Good morning, Mr. Herr.
And as I indicated, with us together, we try to look at emerging facts and then try to understand what causes those particular sets of facts to come to the fore, and then try to understand how to better, appreciate or evaluate what it is that we're hearing and that we're seeing, and then provide us the opportunity for you to be able to weigh in on how you see it, so that as a population, as a group, we're able to provide a better balanced, discussion to people about what's really going on.
So does it boil down to, is this yet another senseless killing, or did this young man...
Well, I would reframe it this way. If I stop you because you have a cracked lens on your turn signal, or I stop you because I ran your license plates and you had a ticket that you didn't pay,
That's right.
60 days ago, and you're still driving around in your car, is that worth me putting 60 bullets in you?
Well, no, but I did commit a minor crime.
Is there any way you can look at a non-moving violation or a possible small-level, low-level traffic violation? Is there any way that you could look at that would justify why you would fire 8 officers, would run a man down, chase a man down, and then fire 90 bullets at the man, with 60 plus of those bullets hitting the man?
Driving while black?
See, because that's the only thing that makes any sense. I mean, it's the only factor that you can look at. And I need to, because James, you and I had this conversation before we were on the air, and I need for you to understand this from this perspective. I'm an African man. I'm an old African man.
I wouldn't see that
Well,
I don't see it that way. You may see it that way, but I definitely don't.
well, okay.
No, I would say I am an experienced.
Right, because I'm really 38 years old, so we're trying to work from that perspective.
Hey, you know what?
38 plus.
You know what? Experienced people have a great deal of experience.
Well, that's true, and I want to tell you that from my 72 years of experience, I mean 38 years that I've been alive, but my 72 years of experience during that time period, I've encountered the police many times. I mean, not because of any conflict, but like I was telling you earlier, I was driving and a police officer pulls up alongside of me, rolls his window down, I roll mine down. He says, you got a crack, lens on your left rear turn signal.
Right.
I said, no, I didn't know that. So I pull over. I go look. I put the turn signal on to go look, and sure enough, one of the two. My car at that time had two lenses on the left and two lenses on the right, and one of the lenses was out. The other lens was working. So the turn signal was still working, but I was missing one of the lenses. That had gone out. My point is that police officer he notified me. He didn't stop me to give me any grief. He was just notifying me that you got a bad lens, and obviously you don't normally look at that. So if I don't tell you, you probably wouldn't know that you had a bad lens.
Right.
So he's informed me, and then we, said our goodbyes, and politely and moved on. I rarely have had conflicts with the police, except in that period of my life when I was involved in, these black resistance movements to the conduct that occurs, in this country. But outside of those situations, I've never had very few interactions that I would consider.
Well,
to be,
I've had some conflicts, guys.
Yeah, well, you should talk about those things.
Where I was pulled over and actually put in chains, put in handcuffs, about to take me in, and a black officer said, "Hey guys, what are you doing with him? I know him," and they let me go.
So you're glad that people like me fought the civil rights struggles to get people like you a job, right? So that you could be a police officer, and then you could be the ones that stop people from abusing you, with those police. See, when I was young, there were no black police. Okay.
Right, exactly. So the black police officer, like, "Hey guys, what are you doing with him?" They assuming I'm a criminal just because I don't know why.
So the issue that's in front of a lot of people over this Jalen Walker case is why did 13, I don't know if I said there, actually 13 police officers were on the scene. Now, I'm assuming that you don't have 13 police officers on every corner, in the city of Akron, so that whenever somebody gets stopped for a traffic violation, what was happening that would cause that to occur?
Well, the young man is running.
But he wasn't running when the incident began. When the police encountered this young man, or the young man encountered the police, he wasn't running. He was in his car. Presumably, the police were on the street patrolling. I assume. Right. I just don't understand why there were 13 police officers there in the first place. That suggests to me that there was an extended chase, and that a lot of police officers responded to the chase. But then I would ask the question, why would you mount that kind of a chase scene if the guy had a broken turning signal, on his car? Why would something like that justify you sending 13 police officers to the scene, to go and arrest this guy?
What I don't get is, why do people run from police?
I get that, and we can talk about that, okay? Because I can understand why people run. I can understand that. Okay. But in terms of setting aside why he ran, the question is, how do we get from no police driving down the street to a police officer sees you have a cracked lens on the turn signal, in the rear turn signal of your car, and that turns into a attempted police stop, the driver running away, first driving away and then running away, and 13 police officers showing up on the scene, all firing their Gatling guns over a traffic issue. Even if the guy's guilty of 14 traffic issues. You know, even if the guy is a punk and was running his mouth, which he wasn't. But if all of what I just said was true, you still wouldn't shoot a guy over that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like you were stopping a murderer. It's not like you were stopping somebody who was a kidnapper or something. You're talking about a traffic, violation. Why would that justify 13 police officers firing 90 times at this guy? See, I mean, so I understand that if the guy ran, and I saw the guy run, so you can't say the guy didn't run, right? Now, there's a lot of nuances about this running, okay? I mean, it looks to me on the video that the guy jumps out of the passenger side of the car and he does not have anything in his hands at all. So the assertion that he was shooting at the police is not reflected in the video. Now, Officer Milet, who is the police chief for the Akron City Police, he says that the young man fired at the police while the car was moving. That's not my characterization.
Right.
That's his characterization.
That's right.
Now, I don't know. Maybe you guys got better stuff. You're more athletic than I am.
Maybe.
You can have the car going south and can be firing at somebody, going north, and then, you could jump out of the car from the driver's seat over the console between the driver's seat and the passenger seat, jump over the console, and then open the passenger side door and jump out the passenger side door, and then run. Now, that seems somewhat awkward to me, that all of that, could have occurred. Then you're saying that you tased the guy. But when you see the video, you see the car, moving, and then the car comes to a stop. The young man jumps out of the passenger side of the, of the car. That actually occurred. But you don't see any tasing going on. Within 2 or 3 seconds of the time that you see him jumping out of the car, you hear all of these bullets being fired. So when did the tasing take place? Or did you just say you were tasing because nobody can hear the tasing in the noise of the firing of the police bullets and whatnot? And if the body cams and audio on the body cam says that, well, the guy said he was trying to tase him, so he must have been trying to tase him. So that creates the appearance, that you were trying to use non-lethal force to bring the guy to a halt. That's what it looks like to me, that's just words that were being said to give the impression that they were doing something they really had not done. That's what it comes across to me. But at the end of the day, how do 13 police officers get on the scene in the first place when the presenting issue is a traffic violation and or a equipment, infraction? So we have that issue. The issue about the police claiming that this young man shot at the police and that, we found a gun and it was sitting right on the front seat that he had to climb over in order to get out of the passenger side of the of the car, but he managed to have the gun sitting neatly on the front seat, neatly next to a box of ammunition, neatly next to a gold ring, all of which were sitting neatly, in the middle of the seat, not getting knocked onto the floor or the rug or knocked out of the car or anything like that, just sitting there real neatly. That seems a little bit put on to me. It just seems I don't know. I don't know how to take that. But my question is, as I had asked you earlier, is if he actually fired at the police, then you should be able to use the gun to do a forensic analysis on the gun to see if the gun had been fired. How many times do we hear them talking about, they could tell if the gun was fired 4 times or 3 times, and so on. You could tell what kind of bullet, came out of the gun. They got all kind of scratch analyses, ballistic analyses, and so on. You're telling me this happened on June 27th.
Yep.
I wrote my report on July 5th.
Right.
9 days after this occurred.
Right.
In 9 days, you hadn't bothered to test to see whether or not this gun had been fired? So that sounds, again, like rhetoric. It sounds to me like, the police giving you a schema to give you the impression that there was some logical reason why they did what they were doing, right? But there's no lie. I'm just not seeing that. And every time I see people lie about something that is not even fundamental, to the case, you're just lying about something just to create a image or an impression.
Well, it's called covering my rear end.
Right.
Is really what they're doing.
And it suggests to me that something really horrid has actually gone on, and you're trying to cover the horrid thing. And they're always distracting you. So, getting you thinking about the flash, there was a glint, of light, that maybe off the chrome, but, on your windowsill of your car, and maybe a light from some other source flashed off of the car and you saw a glint. But they claim that it was a gunshot. If there was a gunshot, then the gun would have been fired. There would have been some forensic, evidence on the gun that had been fired. The fact that 9 days have gone by at the time that I was writing this report, and you don't have any evidence of the gun being fired. You didn't even bother to see whether or not the gun had been fired. You just said this. You've been saying this for 9 days in a row. You've been claiming that this gun was fired without ever bothering to check to see if the gun had been fired, because the gun probably never was fired. Now, I don't know whether it was his gun or not. I do know this. In Ohio, unlike New York State, until you and Clarence Thomas, did your Supreme Court decision.
That's right.
Prior to that, it was illegal for you to be running around with a pistol on the front seat of your car, packing and whatnot, unless you had a permit, for doing that.
Yeah, but didn't Amy Coney Barrett just strike that down?
I know.
In New York State?
Well, that was the handmaiden, they were holding hands,
right.
the handmaiden.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
And of course, Clarence. Who we hadn't heard from until we got the 6-3 majority on the court. We hadn't heard from him, a single time. But now that he's got this backup, with these other 5 conservative judges, he's the man of La Mancha. He's running around with a cape, and he's the guy. But all that being said, in Akron, Ohio, in the state of Ohio, you can carry a gun in your car, okay? So if they found a gun on the front seat of the car and it was a gun that was legally purchased by him, there's no crime in that. There's no tort issue. There's no criminal issue, that's involved. There's no civil issue, that's involved in that. That's a permissible activity in Ohio. You can carry a gun in your car. I personally think you should not be able to do that, but that's just me. I think, honestly, James, I know this is going to sound terrible. It's a terrible judgment, I think, me to say about my own country. But I really don't think that we are well enough mentally for us to be running around here with guns.
No, that's not funny. That's an actual true statement. Yeah. That this society is not mature enough to handle a gun.
There's something wrong with us. The Australians.
And we prove this over and over and over again.
The Australians, I know there's only 16 Australians, right? But the Australians have guns at a percentage similar to the United States. It's like for every 10 people in Australia, there's 8 people with a gun, right? Okay. Where in the United States, for every 10 people, in the United States, there's 12 people with, or there's 12 guns for every 10 people. We're kind of crazy. But Australia's got a gun population too. They're manically in love with their guns. But you only see like 3 or 4 people killed by gun violence in Australia in a year. They rarely have anybody killed by gun violence. Wow. Why would that be? They're the same kind of people. They all come from the Dutch and the British and so on, same cultural, context and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Why would that be? The only thing that's different to me is the United States has this despicable history of race-based enslavement in this country that created a caste system where all of the issues that arise out of racism in this country are all things that come from parts of the Caucasian population at the non-Caucasian population in this country. You rarely hear, incidences that you could even characterize as racism, that goes on between the non-white population of this country attacking the white population in this country. We talk about this we talk about racism and this classism in this country, and we talk about it as if it comes out of the air. We don't act like we understand that there's a context that exists here. You know, if I'm the Wright family and you're the H family, right? And I've always owned everything. You know, I own the liquor store, the general store, I own the streets, you know, the police are all from my family, you know, and so on. And you are a subject person to me. And even though we start passing laws that say that, you know, I'm no longer, you know, you're superior, you're no longer my subject, but I still operate all of the liquor stores and all the general stores. I run the police, you know, and so on. If there's any discrimination issues that are going to go on, it's going to be me discriminating against you. It's not going to be you discriminating against me because you don't have anything to discriminate, you know, against me with.
Take anything from you.
Right. You don't have any power over anything, right? So, you know, so I'm not talking about incidences of people talking racially to each other and getting into a fist fight, because that's not that's racist. But that's not the kind of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about racism in terms of power. You know, people exercising racial power over other people. That doesn't happen two ways. That happens one way. And we don't talk about it that way, so we're not addressing it that way.
How can we talk about it if they're not being allowed to teach it in schools?
Thank you, James.
No.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, we talked about this, I think, on Monday. I think we talked. No. It was on my Saturday program, another program. We talked about in Texas, your cousin, you know, Greg Abbott, your governor.
Greg Abbott's my cousin.
Your cousin, right?
Yes, sir.
Greggy said that we don't want to talk about slavery anymore. We're going to rebrand slavery, so that we can talk about it in a nicer way. We're now calling it involuntary relocation.
Wow.
You're calling the enslavement of millions of people, you're calling that involuntary relocation.
Wow, involuntary relocation.
Because it sounds nicer.
It does sound nicer.
It doesn't sound like slavery. We're not even talking about slavery. Now you're taking the discussion about slavery and making it disappear and replacing it with the discussion about something I don't even know what you're talking about. What does that even mean? You know, right?
Relocation, wow.
I just wanted to help us take a look at that. You know, I was looking at the report that we got from Chief, I think it's Stephen Milet, the Akron police chief.
Yep.
And he talked about the fact that he says, this is him saying this, he says Walker didn't have a weapon. That's what the police chief said. But he said that in the context of when he was actually, you know, shot and they, you know, examined him, you know, on the ground. They didn't find him with a weapon on his person at that point. But they're also saying they found the weapon in his car, neatly on the passenger seat of the car, neatly next to a box of ammunition, neatly next to a ring, a shiny
gold ring,
a shiny ring.
All right.
I mean, and then he climbed from the driver's seat over the central the console between the driver's seat and the passenger seat. He climbed over that, and then jumped out of the passenger side of the car, and the gun stayed right where it was on the seat, and the ammunition stayed right where it was.
I see what you're saying.
And the ring stayed right where it was, you know, because, you know, we got magic stuff. See, this is how you could shoot at the police while your car is moving, shoot at the police in one direction while you're driving in another direction. Because you got it like that, right? Because you all are a lot more athletic than I am, you know, so you can do things like that. But this makes no sense at all, right? Now Walker says, Milet, the police chief says, well, you know, this is another video that will traumatize people of color. We watch, we mourn, we question why it happens again and again. The mayor says, the video is heartbreaking. It's hard to take in. We don't mention in any of this stuff how heartbreaking it was for those 8 police officers to be forced into administrative leave without pay for the next, you know, several weeks or months on vacation, going to Fort Lauderdale, you know, going to Martha's Vineyard and whatnot, you know, on your dime.
It also could be time used to actually look at this case and see actually what happened.
You think they would do that?
Well, they did it with Officer Chauvin.
Well, they've had 9 days before I did this report. And the basic stuff, like, was the gun ever fired? Since we claim the gun was fired.
It's 9 days, Mr. I agree that this should have been handled. But
no, I'm with you.
But
it could have taken 90 days, to order it up, from whoever does the forensic stuff, and at the lab. That's right. It may be just on the, in the queue. It'll come up a little bit later and whatnot, right? Now, again, the issue that you were talking about, I know we just had a few more minutes. The issue that the mayor and the police chief were talking about is the issue that we know everybody's going to come up with, is going to be focused on. That you heard the people who were protesting yesterday, what they were focused on. Their issue was, I don't care what you're saying. What you're saying means nothing to me. Why would you shoot this man 90 times over what you said is a traffic violation, and in 9 days you can't even tell me what the traffic violation was? The police chief of the unit can't tell me what the violation was. You couldn't interview the people that were there, the police officers that were there, and they couldn't tell you what it was that they were stopping this child for? You can't tell me anything about why you did what you did. You have not written a single report. This is a state where the law in this state requires that you account for every bullet that you discharge from your gun as a police officer. You have to account for every one. That means there has to be a report that says that there's 92 shots fired. You have to account for each one of those 92 shots individually. Why did you fire the gun? Why did you fire that bullet at that time? That's the law in Ohio.
Wow.
But 10 days have gone by now, I'm counting today, and they haven't written a single written report, not one, over this. This is why you have such animosity, in this country. This is why you have people that are so, they talk about us being polarized. It's not polarized the way when you say polarizing that way, it sounds like it's, two sides of a coin that are polarized against each other. That's not what people are talking about. People are saying that you are doing something to me. I'm not doing anything to you. You're doing something to me. And I'm sick and tired of you doing these things to me. And a time is going to come when I'm no longer going to be talking to you about this. We're not going to talk anymore. We're going to do this a different way. And this is going to get really despicably ugly. That's the path that we're on. And there are people in this country who want it to turn ugly like that. They want to see some kind of a civil. We talked about this a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah,
they want to see a civil war in the streets in this country. Okay? They're provoking this. Right? Yep. And we've got to find a way to rescue ourselves, to not allow ourselves to get drawn into something like this.
Could this be part of why we're getting a lot of mass shootings? Maybe this is part of the provoking?
Well, I think that there's an insanity that's going on in this country right now, and it's an indulged insanity. What I mean by indulged is, when I was young, if I even got caught with a gun, my father would have been berserk. Yeah. What are you doing with a gun? For any reason. Is there any justifiable reason? We live in the projects. You ain't hunting anything in the projects. Right? Why would you need a gun? For any reason whatsoever. Right. And he would pummel me, for doing something like that. But we now justify, doing things and engaging in conduct that we used to insulate ourselves from because we thought it was like just despicable conduct. We wouldn't engage in conduct like that. We've somehow allowed ourselves to get socialized into accepting, things that were unacceptable, 50, 60 years ago. And we're going to pay a price for this.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be costly.
I think we're paying it now.
So listen, we got to take care of our sponsors. I'm pretty sure. I hope I haven't run them away being so strongly opposed to this stuff that goes on. But I think you all get it. So if you all stick with us, we will see you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
Go to marchforourlivespetition.com and sign to get Congress to pass common sense gun legislation to protect the lives of the innocent youth of our nation. I'm Alex Wynn with the Never Again movement, and the best way to help is these 3 things. Make your voice heard, register to vote, go to marchforourlives.com and vote for our lives. Go to marchforourlivespetition.com and sign to get Congress to pass common sense gun legislation to protect the lives of the innocent youth of our nation.
Right now, our country feels divided, but there's a place where people are coming together.
I was nervous to talk to someone so different than me.
Yeah, this is the Primo case.
Love has no labels, and One Small Step are helping people with different political views, beliefs, and experiences connect through conversation, and it feels good.
This conversation gives me hope.
It gives me a lot of hope, too.
Take a step toward bringing our country and your community together. Start a conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/one small step. A message from StoryCorps Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
A suburb. He said, no, this is Chicago.
I think also Mr. Hare,
join
after
Mr.
the
Hare
shooting,
on today's
that he
Living
dressed as
for
a
the
woman
People,
to get
dial
out.
878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY. Courtesy MSNBC.
Bobby Crimo on the internet went by a rapper named Awake. In those music videos that he put out under that name, it was pretty much just graphic depictions of mass violence. School shooting, or him getting murdered by the police in cartoon form after a shooting that he perpetrated in these videos. And that was basically his aesthetic. He had a Discord forum where people hopped on and, rooted him on for things. And this sort of aesthetic of mass death that you saw in these forums, it was this fetishization of mass death that you saw constantly from his posts and his music videos.
And see, this is part of what worries me. Because we talk about this thing in the context of this being an expression of a fetish, inside of this Robert, Crimo, that went too far. He just over fantasized, and then his stimulation, he took it to, another step. We got to stop talking about it like that. We got to start talking about this in terms of what it really is. Something is radically changing in the psychology of American people. There are things that we do now that we never used to do.
Right.
Now, you're a lot younger, but when I was a child, the idea that you would punch a girl for any reason, James, we're virtually the same age. I mean, I don't care if the girl was 65 feet tall or she was 1 foot tall. You just wouldn't punch her, just like you wouldn't punch a baby. Right. You wouldn't punch a girl. Not because you thought the girl was so soft that she couldn't take it. We were just culturally, conditioned to the idea that men are men, women are women, men don't fight women.
Right. And when I did hit my sister one time, my father
knocked you out, didn't he?
He did.
He tried to knock you out.
He did.
Right? He impressed on you.
You don't ever
get to do that, right?
Yeah, don't you ever.
So this young man, he's got flowers, on his neck,
Are those flowers?
I think it was a rose on one side, and the petals of the leaves were, some kind of tattoo type stuff. He had writing on his eyebrow, was like his left eyebrow. He had some cursive writing, tattooed onto his eyebrows. Remember when Mike Tyson, went off his rocker and he had this like a mask was actually tattooed to his face and whatnot, and he looked like something frightening. I don't know how his kids put up with it, Now when he got better, as he got older and started getting knocked out and whatnot, and found out that Iron Mike wasn't quite as iron as he thought he was, right? And so when the iron started to fall off, of the Iron Mike, he got a little bit better. Now he said, what am I going to do with all this tattoo that I got on my face and whatnot? And you can't take it off. I mean, once you've done it, you've done it. So it was kind of like that kind of a thing, right? So in this case that we're talking about, again, this is a young man who fantasized about seeing himself almost like some... what's the counter to being a superhero? Who's the opposite? That's a supervillain?
Yes,
is
villain.
That what it is?
Yes,
Lex Luthor or somebody?
Lex Luthor would be
is that
super
kind of
villain,
thing?
yeah.
Right. And so he fetished about that. He just kind of thought of himself as I'm that guy. And he's thinking like that. Now, he's not the kind of guy that can go out into the street and say, I'm just going to knock somebody out.
Yeah, he's not that, no.
He doesn't have that kind of game, right?
You know what I mean? You look at him.
He's only 120 pounds, you know what I mean? He's a little guy.
He probably was picked on by somebody.
More than likely. They probably thought that he was some kind of, this or that. And, but, and that's another point, right? I mean, I'm not going to get on that right now, but that is a point that, again, is another thing that we, have not really conquered in this country. This ideation that because somebody is weak, that means that they are somebody that you can pick on. You can prey on them. Because when you prey on people and they start getting to a place in their head where they think that this is never going to get better, I'm worthless, I'm nothing, and the only way that I could be something, I got to go out in a blaze of glory.
Right.
You don't want these blaze of glory people, showing up in your society with AR-15s. You don't want that, okay? Because it can turn into what we're talking about right now. But we had 7 people. It was 6 when I wrote the report, but I learned late last night that a 7th person died.
Unfortunately.
Right, and 35 people were shot and went to the hospital. I don't think anybody is in a life-threatening condition.
I hope not.
Of those 35 that got shot. But this all happened at a 4th of July celebration. Now,
this is just despicable. I mean, if you really think about what this individual did, here are people who are celebrating the birth independence of our nation, and what this person, you're just picking off people indiscriminately?
My daughter was on the phone with me trying to, work her psychology through on this and talking, with me to talk through it. And what James just said is what she was focused on. She says, Daddy, this is 4th of July. We cannot do anything other than go outside with our flags, with our pennants, with our slogans, and, dress up, and have floats, and this is what we do. This is 4th of July. We celebrate, the Independence Day of the United States. That's what we do.
Have some apple pie.
The whole country, that's what we do. It's nice. It's virtually a religion, in this country, right? It's what we do. And she says, nah, I can't do that anymore.
Right. A lot of people feeling that way.
Right. I mean, she was feeling that about going to the grocery store after that Top supermarket thing, right? But, not to be able to celebrate the 4th of July, you can't go outside. You can't be in a parade. Because
you're going to have some crazy persons. There's a lot of people going out, so it's time for us to shoot.
You understand, my daughter is 47 years old. She's not a baby, okay? But she is so afflicted, by what has gone on that she's feeling tension. And she's a person that's a world traveler. She goes to different countries every week. Wow. It's the kind of game she has. She works for Coca-Cola. She's in upper management, for them and so on. So, it's not like she's some sheltered, handmaiden or something. She's in the world all the time. But now she feels threatened all the time.
Does she ever send you free samples of Coca-Cola?
No, I don't drink.
Mr. Hare,
I don't drink Coca-Cola.
Mr. Hare, maybe just a free case every once in a while.
I don't drink anything with sugar in it. With all of those calories in it.
No bubble water.
None of that stuff.
No.
I'm not there. I drink water.
But no sugar.
I don't mess with meat. And I leave poison. In the bottle. I don't mess with that
very
stuff.
Good mistake.
So anyway, this fellow was 22 years old. So this again. Another young person.
Young man, yeah.
Right? Now, when your daughter was 22 years old, she was still your kid, right?
Right.
She's grown.
Right.
But she's still your kid.
Right.
Right? So I know a lot of you all don't understand why I call somebody, a child. But if you have a 22-year-old child.
Still your child.
You know that 22 years old, you're still a child to you.
Right.
You may not be 22, in terms of the responsibilities you have in the world. But to you, they're like your child, right? So this fellow is 22 years old, Bobby E. Cremo, I guess you said, the third. So, during the attack, he was dressed in women's clothing. So the police chief, or spokesperson rather, Christopher Covelli, he said that he took that to mean that he was trying to hide. He used it as a disguise.
It worked. It took 9 hours for him to get him.
Well, but when I looked at the picture of him, it looked to me like he was in those women's clothes because that's part of his game. That's his normal game. You know.
You think so?
I don't know.
I don't know if that is. I'm just saying it looked. It looked to me that way. You know. But he's a very narrow.
Yeah.
You know.
He actually looked like kind of like a female when I saw him dressed.
So you know. So I don't know enough about that, right, to be able to. I just know that he got up on the roof of one of these buildings. This is a place where there's probably only 3 buildings that have more than more than 2 floors, you know, in the entire space. These are like 1-story, 2-story, you know, type buildings in this area where the parade was going on. Now this is a suburb of Chicago. So I mean they have buildings, right?
Right.
But this is a suburb of Chicago. So they're just it's like, you know, when you're in Lewiston, you know, or someplace like that. You know, it's that kind of a community. And he gets on a roof. People are, you know, going by, you know, in the parade stuff. They got the cotton candy stuff going on, and the little kids and the, you know, little prams and whatnot, you know, the little carts the kids are carried in, and you know, there's guys taking pictures of their kids and their moms, you know, and they're all talking, and this is a kind of a place where you got to figure that if you were walking down the street and you bump into 2 people, you probably know one of those people by name.
That's what, what most of those people say. This is a great community.
You know, and so this is hard. I mean, this is hard, right? Because if you don't feel, this is like not being safe at home.
Right.
This is almost like, you know, you're physically in your house and you don't feel safe in your own house. I'm sorry, James, you're about to...
Question. I understand, Mr. Hare, that this young man, if I can't even say he's a man because of what he did, but apparently he had some charges brought up against him in the past about knives.
Yep.
Once again.
And they took the knives away from him. He's had 3 incidences where he's presented as if, you know, he's had some ideation about being the man in La Mancha, you know, with the swords, and I'm going to, you know, gut people.
Here's my question, guys.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. H, but all the ultimate question is why aren't law enforcement agencies talking to other law enforcement agencies if this person has already been investigated for having something wrong upstairs?
Because there is a psychological, or not even psychological, there's a premise that seems to be accepted in this country, at least for certain populations,
for certain people,
that it's okay for you to have guns, for you to ideate about, you know, killing people, especially if you're ideating about killing people and ain't them. You know, they're with all of that.
Here's my problem, James and Mr. Hare. It's like, okay, we just talked about the shooting of the young black. And granted, let's say if he did shot a gun, they shot over 90 shots and 60 went into him. But when it comes to the white counterpart, we handle them with kid gloves. Oh, if you're a little hungry, we'll take you to McDonald's. Oh, we gonna make sure you're okay. It's a difference in how you handle. Well, that's my problem.
Also, keep in mind that the way that the perpetrator responded to the police is different.
Okay.
So in this case, they, you know, got a handle on, because somebody who thought this kid had done this saw him.
It was an officer,
right, and called, you know, 911. And police arrived, and they got a car out in front of the guy. They had a car behind the guy. So he was now stuck right between them. So he gets out of the car, you know, complies, you know, gets out of the car, you know, leaves his guns, you know.
Let me ask you this question. On both of those instances, this one and even the one here at Tops, if those was blacks, what do you think would happen?
Well, they would have been shot before they left for church. They would have gone home. They would have left the house with bullets in their bodies already and whatnot, right? So that's a different scale story. But my point is that in these incidences where you see the white perpetrator walk away uninjured, or even barely injured,
right,
the way that white perpetrator interacted with the police when they got caught is different.
Yeah.
In these circumstances.
Right.
If you run, you create a different lattice in terms of the decision process. Now, I'm not saying the decision process is sensible, That, to me, shooting somebody over a traffic ticket is not sensible, okay? But the fact that the person was running and you as a police officer feel, you're trained to go get anybody who runs away from you, they either have to comply, get on their knees or whatever, or I'm coming at you with guns blazing. That's the way that these people say that they're trained. So that's what they do. But it's different in that circumstance than if I come at you. You got a call coming in. It's different in that circumstance than if I say stop. I think you're the guy I'm looking for, and you drop your weapons. Your hands are free, and then you comply. This young man got on this primo. He got on the ground, his hands behind his back, and they handcuffed him.
Could it be that because you're all white, you feel safer when the police arrive?
Well, remember the cultural context, right? I mean, the way that they read him may be different than the way that they may read an African person.
Right.
They may not perceive the behavior of the African person as benign as they perceive the behavior of that Caucasian person. I really can't say that, but when I look at the circumstances of these cases, the things that are always different are how the person who's the accused perpetrator, how that person reacts to the police, when that situation occurs.
Right.
So in every instance where a person runs, or fights,
right,
you always see a severe escalation,
right,
of the response. But in this case with the Walker case, it didn't make any sense to me that why would you have 8 police officers or 13 police officers in the scene in the first place?
Probably the first police officer who chased him. I think he got a gun, and that's probably why the rest came
But again,
along.
you haven't seen anything that show you. Now, it seemed to me that they made up this story about the gun. I don't think there was a gun at all. Now, in the case of this Cremo fellow, he's ideating. He's saying things like on one of the ends of his emails, he says, "I need to leave now. I need to just do it. It is my destiny. Everything has led up to this. Nothing can stop me, not even myself. Is there such a thing as free will, or has this been planned out like a cosmic recipe?" This is somebody who is actually driving themselves. Do you remember in church, maybe 15, 20 years ago, they used to preach about something called a runaway thought? Do you remember that in church?
Yeah.
Right? What they talk about is that sometimes you can get a thought like a worm, in your head, and it's kind of seductive to you, and everything you experience seems to explain or to justify or rationalize what that worm was about inside your head. And eventually you can get so psyched up about it that becomes your new reality. You start thinking that is actually reality when it's not real at all. And when people start thinking that something is reality that's not real at all, abruptive, sometimes horrible things can happen with those people. And I think that's what we're seeing here. We're allowing people to get socialized into thought processes that can be actualized with these guns that couldn't be actualized when we were younger. For us, slingshots were like the best we could do as a weapon and whatnot, right? But we have a caller. Hang on. Let me get that call real quick. Hi, caller. Are you there?
Hi, Mr. Hare. How
Hey,
are you?
James. How you doing? Good to hear from you.
Pretty good. Australia does have stringent gun laws now.
Yep.
After a mass shooting in Tasmania in the 1990s, I think it was.
Yep.
And the people there are just as disgusting as we are. They even had something called the White Australian Immigration Policy. I don't know if you remember that.
I know. That's why I say that they're the same kind of people that came from the United States. They're the same English and Dutch type people and whatnot.
So if you have a racist country, you take away their guns. I mean, if you have an insane country, you take away their guns. And if you have a violent country, you take away their guns.
Listen, Pierre Trudeau, upstairs, a block away in Canada, when we had, I think 30 days ago, no, I think it was when the top supermarket thing went down, or very close to that, they had a shooting up in Canada. And Trudeau said, that's it. That's enough of this. This is not happening again, right? and they started going around buying people's guns. Right?
Yeah, they have gun buyback.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't just trying to get people to stop buying guns. They were buying the guns back from people and whatnot, right? And their gun violence has gone down by 70 or 80%, over the course of that time period. Where in the United States, we can't even pass a law because you can't get a law through the Senate.
Well, it's money. You money.
Well, it's not just that. You can't get a law through the Senate. The Senate won't even let you allow a vote, on the Senate about a law, to restrict gun purchases and gun ownership and so on.
Well, there's one particular political party that seems to adhere to the Second Amendment very stringently. We voters need to vote them out if we value our own safety. We're no longer in the days where the Second Amendment applies. It's not like British redcoats are going to come banging on our doors demanding that they be housed.
And taking your turkey off of your Thanksgiving table.
Those days are over.
Right.
And now it's the corporations that are going to pollute your air and your water.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Anyway, about police response.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it strange how the top shooter and this week's Illinois shooter and the Waukesha, Wisconsin shooter weren't shot full of holes?
Yep, that's James's point. He's like, how is it that as egregious as their conduct was, nothing happened to them? In fact, James said they were going to order one guy a hamburger.
Well, they did. The tops got it.
Is it they did order him a hamburger?
I think that was Willie's point.
Yeah, took a McDonald's. Are you hungry, son? We know you shot all these people, but are you hungry?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
I know. Well, he was tuckered out from all of that shooting and whatnot. I mean, I don't understand that.
They didn't even rough him up.
Right. You remember in the Kenosha, Wisconsin case, with the young boy. Now his name escapes me and whatnot, but he killed 2 people and maimed a third person. And they actually took him to a fast food place and fed him.
Same thing.
Fed him a meal.
Unbelievable. It's like
there's something wrong with the police response. Now, what I'd like to know is why aren't excessive violence cases by the police reviewed by a DOJ task force, and why aren't inadequate police responses reviewed by a DOJ task force?
Well, I'm hoping that somebody explains, what I've been asking about in the Walker case. How is it possible that you claim that the reason why you fired all these bullets is because this guy shot at you, and yet we have not heard anything about the gun? You said you found the gun on the front seat of the car, neatly packaged, right next to the ammunition, neatly packaged right next to the ring. And the guy climbed over these things to jump out of the car real quickly.
And they stay neatly packaged.
They didn't get knocked on the floor or anything like that. And then you're telling me that that's a material reason for why you say you started doing all of this shooting. Clearly, we would want to know, did this gun actually fire? So that you could know that there was at least some basis for why the police reacted the way that they did.
That's why you need DOJ oversight for things like this.
Yep.
It sounds like these cops were just foxes or dogs at a fox hunt. They just wanted to see how many bullets they could pump into someone.
Yeah, it's like, when there was a sort of a term that came up about 30, 40 years ago called wilding. You remember when the Central Park Plaza or Park killer thing or a rapist thing went down? They said that these kids
Trump blamed the wrong people for that.
Of course. Trump is still blaming the Central Park 5, for this.
Exonerated.
Right.
Somebody else was found by DNA evidence to be the rapist.
Right. A guy, I think his name was Riaz or something like that. I forget his name. But
anyway, Wilding.
Yep. And so it seems to me that the police were wilding, in this case in Akron, Ohio. That they
they were. There's something psychologically wrong with gangs, and the police aren't gangs. Why aren't police recruits weeded out with frequent background checks and psychiatric evaluations?
So what you're speaking on now is what I heard one of the women, that was a respondent, to this case on MSNBC last night, and she was saying what we've been talking about, here in Buffalo for years, which is you can't train people out of this behavior, that's inside. This is inside of them. This is not like a tactic, that you learn and then it's a bad tactic, so you learn another tactic, to accomplish your goal. Issue. This is something that's inside of you. It's how you perceive the world.
Right.
And you can't train that out of somebody. If you just don't like people, you don't like them. If you think people are less than you, you think that they're less than you.
Yeah. That's why we need to weed them out with frequent psychiatric evaluations. And we can figure out which ones are like that. By the way, one of the reasons police unions, pro-police, are so hated by the public is that the unions primarily are used to pay for legal representation for the worst cops.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. I mean, why can't we abolish police unions? Cops can join regular unions just like any other government worker.
Yeah, but you're never going to win that argument that people don't have a right to organize. Because remember, when you're an individual organizing in a company for your own self on your own, you got 1,000 people working for the company and maybe 80 people working in management, and you're out there as a lone wolf arguing, for better, pay or working conditions and whatnot. They can just blow you off or fire you.
Yeah, but the police are government workers, so they can join an already existing government workers union.
Well, that's true. They don't have to be in the police union. They could be in a different union, right? So those
police unions have a bad reputation.
Those are tactical things that we should start trying to push. We need to have our representatives, our political representatives, our community-based representatives. They have to be pushing, for getting those kind of reforms if we want them to take place. Jim, they got the clock on me now. I got the hook on my neck. James is over here pulling me and whatnot, saying, "Get off the screen." So,
I better let you go.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you so much. Look forward to talking on Friday. So you all know what we got to do. We've got to become accountable to each other. There's no way out of this wilderness other than us becoming accountable for and to each other. If we do this, this can get to be a better place. Let's try to do better, as much as we possibly can. Look forward to talking to you all on Friday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. See you all then.
WBNY Buffalo.
See, one of the things I had written down was, why didn't anybody react to
some of your comments? I didn't want to go, but
because their guns were all confiscated. Just pray to God for him to change his right. Encourage it. Right. Yep.
I lost it. Okay.
I love it. Okay.
579 people.
No shit. Okay. See there? we're gonna be CBS in just a minute, man. You don't believe it, but we are.